Okay. Excellent. Thanks to everyone for being here. Now we will move into the icing on the cake. This will come to you in the form of sun.
That's right.
Right.
That was to make you feel guilty so you'd stay around for my talk. It worked. It worked. There you go.
Period. So, this is what we all hope to see in Hawaii. Barton George went to school here, went away, worked for a little company called Sun Microsystems. It's begun to do great things. GNU Linux strategist. And now we have the chance to have him join us as our third and final speaker today at FOSS. Sun is one of my favorite companies because they make such nice, delicious hardware that I want and that I covet and that I desire. And that when people donate it to HOSIF, even if it's an old Spark 10, I feel very special because I know that somebody paid a lot of money for it one day. And I really, really love it. And they're an amazing company. They are a company, if not the company, that can change the landscape of free and open source software development in the years to come. They've got a global marketing force. They've got a 1-800 phone number.
Yes, we do.
They've got a 1-800 phone number. And that means the world when you try to differentiate yourself and become a true player in the enterprise and SMB sector with free and open source software. And this is a company that gets it. And there's potentially some really great things that might happen this year with respect to product licensing. Already Solaris has become OpenSolaris. And with tools like dtrace at your hands, you can become master of your machine. And if you don't know what dtrace is, look it up because it is special. So we're very fortunate to have Barton George speak. Listen closely. Barton George brought special show swag. And you don't have to give him money for it, but we will ask you to ask questions to get a t-shirt. So I count about, I don't know, a fair number of t-shirts. So get your questions ready. Yeah. And please join me in welcoming Punahou grad, local boy does good, back to Hawaii, making his dad proud, Barton George.
And we've also got some stickers here for everybody. Got some OpenSolaris, got some Share stickers, some Java Power, and some Java stickers as well. So first of all, I'd just like to figure out sort of who's in the audience. I think I've gotten a bit of a flavor sitting through some of the other talks and by the questions you've asked. But I have a feeling that predominantly we've got people here from academia, whether that's students or professors. So I'm just curious, who's a student here? Student, okay. And who's a professor? And who's in private industry? Rodeo clowns. Okay, cool. We got one rodeo clown. There's always one. Any high school students, or is this mostly college? High school graduate? Okay, graduate student. Right, that's what I meant. Graduate students as well. Anybody here from Punahou? Yay, one Punahou student. Any OIA students here? OIA grads? Yay! All right, with that I'll start. Okay, so basically I've got a whole bunch of slides that I cobbled together last night in the hotel room. This is sort of a new job that I've recently taken on, which is really cool. I've been at Sun now for about 12 years and done a whole bunch of different things. Started out actually setting up manufacturing in Brazil. So I didn't really have any operations background, but I had done stuff in different countries and I thought I might be able to do that. So I started out doing that. And I've done product management, I've done branding, I did naming at Sun, so I know Dave's pain when he talks about trying to find a name that's not trademarked, it doesn't mean kill your mother in another language, all sorts of things. And more recently, I took on the job of Mr. GNU Linux. And what that meant in the beginning was basic product management. So Sun actually sells, or I should say resells, Red Hat Linux and SUSE Linux. And I was doing a lot of internal facing stuff, working with their engineers, getting that price listed, getting that ready to go out. During that time, I started working with the sort of the lone man in our company who was carrying the banner of free and open source software, and that's our Chief Open Source Officer, Simon Phipps. And he and I worked together on Ubuntu Linux, which is what I'm running here, and which is what they're giving away. And Sun's been doing a lot of stuff with Ubuntu over the last year, and it's been a lot of fun. And Simon got the charter from our ponytailed CEO, Jonathan Schwartz, to start up a whole team around free and open source software, because this has become so key and central to Sun's strategy going forward. And then Simon asked me to be on this team. So I started in July, and I am now, after about a year, getting rid of all that product management stuff, the internally facing stuff. I'm getting a chance to come out and speak to people like yourselves. And so this is really my first time giving this presentation, but a lot of this stuff is stuff that I've been dealing with for a long time. So if you talk about FOSS, free and open source software, what is it all about? Well, it's about freedom, it's about sharing, and it's about communities. So Richard really stretched the freedom aspect of it this morning. Another thing that Sun's been a big advocate of ever since our founders looked like this is sharing. So this is, you've probably heard about these, Dave mentioned in the talk as well. This is what the four guys who founded Sun looked like back when they were in their, I guess, mid-20s. And what they did at the time is they took off-the-shelf parts, put together a computer, and offered it up with BSD Linux. And then over the years, these are some of the things that we have shared with the community. Either things that we have liberated and given back to the community to work on, or things that we've just played an active role in and contributed quite a bit. So things like Mozilla, X.org, GNOME. A lot of things we've done is with the help manuals, internationalization, and accessibility, 508 compliance for people with disabilities. So this has been something that Sun has done, not so much as a strategy, more as a value, more part of being part of the high-tech community over the last 20 years. But now that value has moved to become a strategy. And free and open source software is not just one of the many strategies that we have within Sun, but it is the strategy that we're pursuing. So why have we chosen it and why now? So here's some of the reasons why. I'm not going to go through all of them in great depth. But basically, maturity. As you've seen, you start out with someone like Richard, lone voice, 1983. No one really paid much attention to him. This is now, what, 23 years, 4 years later, it's 2007. And FOSS has evolved into the mainstream. Sun is learning how to build communities. This is something, as I said, we've done sort of on the side, but we've gotten a lot of experience and built this up slowly but surely. If we look at adoption, GNU Linux, big spreader of the free and open source software movement. Customers are now demanding free and open source software. It's not just something that hobbyists do. It's something that Fortune 500 companies are running, whether it's Apache Web Server, whether it's Firefox, and a whole bunch of other great things. And then the developers. Developers love to hack, they also love to follow volume. If you're going to develop something for a platform, you're going to want to develop something for a platform that's all over the place. So your program gets out and gets used and seen by as many people as possible, as opposed to running for a small niche, which maybe only a couple of people are going to use and benefit from. And then innovation. We start talking about the big buzzword, Web 2.0. It really has been built on the innovations and FOSS foundations. And then community development, innovation happens everywhere. What we mean by that is, as you probably guess, Sun's got a lot of really bright people, but that's just a real small, minute comparison to all the really bright people who are outside of Sun. And by working through the free and open source software movement, you can leverage other people who not necessarily are employed by Sun Microsystems. Whoops. Go back, sorry, I clicked the wrong button. and then who wins? So what is the advantage? We talked about developers, and Richard talked about all the different reasons this morning why developers would want to be part of free and open source software. One of the things we talked about, I just talked about, is the idea of volume. Volume begets value. Once again, if you're going to write for a big platform, there's lots of ways to get your software out into the hands of others. Turning skill and knowledge into new opportunities. If we look at customers, it's basically about the fact that they can take the source, they can modify it, they can change it to their own heart's content. There's more applications, new markets served, just a lot more variety that they can choose from. And then if you look at Sun, why would a company like us turn to free and open source software as our software strategy? And that allows us, this is sort of a fancy thing, our chief open source officer is British, and he talks in terms like this: monetizing ubiquity at the point of value. Basically what this means is the fact that now as a company or as a developer, you can try something for free, and you can use it, and you can decide whether you like it or not. If you do like it, and you want to buy support and service, then you can pay for it. You say, okay, there is value in this, I do want more ancillary products, I do want help with this, I am going to pay for it. But I don't have to pay up front without ever trying it. So this is the monetizing ubiquity, the point of value. And then we just talked about the same thing, the bottom down here, talking about the volume begets value. So once again, more volume, more value you can derive. So there's many different reasons that Sun has taken on free and open source software as its main strategy. One is it allows us to stay current and stay in touch. And this is something we've been doing ever since the very beginning. So when we're working with companies like Postgres, Mozilla, GNOME, X.org, we're contributing, but we're also learning. And we're also getting parts of this that come back to the company. It allows you to stay relevant, to stay in touch, and stay current. So this is something where you're just part of the dialogue, you're part of the environment, part of the community, and if you're going to be in high tech, you can't afford to be walled off from the rest. So this is something we've always done. Now the big reason, as I've been talking about, is driving volume. So how do you drive volume? You lower the barriers to adoption. And once again, in other words, you don't make people pay for it before they even get a chance to use it. You give it away free. Then developers can take it, start working with it, start developing on it, and you start building communities and you start building markets that you can then monetize. And then once again, volume drives value. So here's something that our CEO said: those who are trying to defend the barriers are fighting freedom. I would not want to be on the wrong side of that battle. Okay, so once again, Sun is not a Sun's it's a huge company, it's very big, it's got a lot of people who use it, but we do not have the ubiquity of platform that somebody like a Microsoft has. And it's all about getting out there and staying relevant. So if you are a developer and you're looking to what do I develop to, you look at what platform out there has the greatest reach. If it doesn't have the greatest reach, then you're going to say, well, I'm going to go with the one that does. So I'll give you some examples. Things like Spark, things like OpenSolaris, within their markets, they are very big. But though there are big fishes in small ponds, and we'd rather be a small fish in a big pond, something like that. Anyway, it's all about getting out there and getting into the market. Another reason, the third reason of 4, is addressing growth markets. So there are a lot of countries out there who won't touch software unless it is free and open source software. They want to keep dollars or pesos or whatever their monetary unit is inside their own company, their own country. And they do so by not having to pay lots of money back to other companies. And the last reason we look at it is it allows us to disrupt locked markets. So somebody like Internet Explorer, that was the only game in town. They thought they killed Netscape, but it arose in a different incarnation, and that was in Firefox. Just out of curiosity, how many people here use Firefox? Okay, just a couple. What about Thunderbird? Okay, not as many, but still a lot. So as you see, they have done something that was completely sewn up by Microsoft, now has created a whole new market and a whole new entrance in there. And then Microsoft Office, what about OpenOffice? Who here uses OpenOffice? Yay, okay, I'm using OpenOffice, and everybody at Sun uses OpenOffice as well. And then Windows, unfortunately, is still around. But that could change.
It's getting bigger.
Yeah, it is. engineer in the room? Okay, got that one. Did that one. Competitive is a build. Okay, yeah, I guess this is a build slide. I didn't mean to, but okay, so this is a build slide. So what do we do? How do we engage with free and open source software? What are the ways in which we leverage it? One is to aggressively engage in projects. That's that first one I was talking about, keeping the dialogue going, staying current with what's happening. So even though people are on Sun's payroll, they can use part of their time to contribute to things like Mozilla, like GNOME, like X.org, and we have people who are on the boards of these various communities. Promote and shepherd open communities, and I'm going to give you an example of 3 main ones where Sun has liberated our software, turned it over to the community, and then we tend to promote and shepherd that. Use open source products internally, which I'm sure a lot of people here are doing. And then this is that volume thing again, making money on expanded markets, productization, serviceability, innovations, solutions, and systems. So basically, as Dave was talking about the duct tape and string, a lot of people can use an open source project or a product, but when they want to take it into production, they need to have service. It needs to be backed up with support and service. So a lot of Sun's customers want that, even if they have open source software, they want to know that it's not going to go down. So if you're an eBay or a Google, you're not going to use software, no matter how cheap it is. If it goes down, that's a huge loss for you. So this is where somebody comes in like a Viata, like a Sun, like a Red Hat, who says, we will take this free and open source software and we will provide assurance around it that it will work, and then if it doesn't, we'll come in there and we'll help you make it work for you. Okay, so even though we've been doing this for quite a while, there's still a lot of people within Sun who are very uncomfortable with the idea of free and open source software. In fact, I've seen our CEO speak, and he asked the audience, because I think it was about a year and a half ago, he said to people at Sun, he said, all of our products, all our software products will be open source. We will make them free and open source software. He asked people, how many people think that that's the right solution? How many people really believe? In a crowd that was maybe 3 times his size, there was maybe 20 hands. He said, okay, well, that's a bug. So what first that needs to happen is people at Sun need to really believe that this is also a sound business practice for us as well. So if you look at it from an engineering point of view, a lot of engineers need to become comfortable with sharing their work. And they're not, I remember Richard said this morning, but basically it's the priesthood of the high technology, the sort of, I understand it, you don't, you're stupid, I don't want you to know what I'm doing. And a lot of engineers kind of feel good about that, and they don't want to put their code out there. They don't want other people looking at it and maybe looking and saying, you didn't quite do that right, how about doing it this way? So that's something that people need to get comfortable with as we start moving to a free and open source model. This is the same thing, stop going it alone. A lot of people like to feel that they're sort of the hero. They need to start working with communities, once again, not invented here. Innovation happens elsewhere. Once again, a lot of bright people inside of Sun, much more bright people outside of Sun who can help. So you need to engage as a citizen of a bigger community, and you need to share and participate. And that's on the engineering side. And then the adaptive change in the management side is open source isn't free. Now this is, and I mean free here as in beer, as in dollars. This is that thing I was talking about when Jonathan comes up and talks to, asks people if they think it's a sound business strategy. People don't quite get it. They say, well, if we give it away for free, how are we going to make money? And what you got to realize is that, yes, you give the software away for free, but once again, you need to have the support services, you need to have the training, the education that goes along with it, and that's where you make your money. Open source means different qualification criteria, and it's a whole new world. You need to start learning about IP, trademarks, and basic licensing. And then once again, everybody needs to embrace and support the cause. So that's one of the things that needs to happen is our CEO can stand up and he can say everything is going free and open source. But the people within the company need to start becoming more comfortable with that. So the group that I'm a part of, that's one of our jobs, is both externally to go out and talk about it like I'm doing now, but also internally to make people feel comfortable with it, understand it, realize that, particularly the engineers, that in liberating their code, turning it over, there's still going to be plenty of chances to monetize this. There's still going to be plenty of chances to innovate and to contribute. So I'm going to give you 3 examples of products that we've liberated recently in chronological order. So probably the 3 biggest pieces of IP that Sun has at our core are Solaris, Spark, and Java. And we have gone through and we have liberated them one by one. The first one was OpenSolaris, and that was 18 months ago. Okay, so what we did was 10 million lines of source code we turned over. It's a core operating system, networking, systems libraries, and commands. And this also includes the good stuff. So this is what Scott was talking about. You talk about dtrace or dynamic tracing. These are the secret sauce, the stuff that really makes Solaris 10 super cool. So we didn't just turn over the B team and keep the A stuff back for us. We turned over everything. And then just to let you know how it works with our commercial product, you have OpenSolaris up at the top, and they do weekly builds of it. So you get bug fixes and contributions back. They do weekly builds. It's then packaged in a fast turn community edition, Solaris Express, which is more of a developer release, which then gets bundled with more support, and that comes out on a less frequent basis as Solaris 10 as the commercially supported version. And then from OpenSolaris, you have both technology ports and distributions that have come out. Let me just show you those. Once again, to the fact that innovation happens everywhere. Here are the distributions that have come out. Linux, Bell Linux, and this is really cool. The guy was a student in India who did this, and he actually put it on a USB drive. So it's a little 4 gig USB drive. You now have an OS on the stick. Nexenta, which is a really neat version where they take like a new user land and they put it around the Solaris kernel. So you get a mixture of both. This was done by 3 guys in the Bay Area. This wasn't a big, huge company project that was done. This was something they turned around quickly. And Martex, I don't know what that is. And then on technology ports, some of the secret sauce has been ported to other things like dtrace to FreeBSD and ZFS, which is our Zeta file system, to Mac OS 10. Actually, it's going to Jaguar, I guess was the next one. And
Leopard.
then Dragonfly Linux. And here are just some of the community numbers. Yes,
It's Leopard that it's going into, and Dragonfly is actually a BSD.
Is Jaguar the one that just came out?
That was Tiger. Leopard is the one that's coming out soon. It's got ZFS in it.
What about Ocelot?
That's after that.
Okay, just kidding.
And Dragonfly is a BSD thing.
Okay, there you go. It's confusing because Tiger also is a code name of our most recent Java SE release as well. And here's just something fun. This is something that Jonathan Schwartz did on his blog. This is a Google mashup they've done with Google Maps and stats on where connected Solaris users are. This is both OpenSolaris and regular Solaris, and it breaks it down by who's running it on Spark, who's running it on x86. So on a world basis, it's at 87,000, and you can see where most of the people are. Got some purple dots out here in the Pacific. Biggest concentration is actually in New York City, so for the financial community. But Europe, big place, a lot in Japan, then all across Asia. So if we double click on that, there's 101 connected Solaris users here in the islands. And once again, double click on that. And here in Oahu, we've got 67. Anybody here using Solaris? Okay, so maybe you guys are up there. You guys see yourselves up there? Where you guys are, so this is just connected users. These are people, there's a lot of people using Solaris out there that are just standalone. So the actual number of Solaris users is much higher than this. These are people who actually are connected to Sun to get free upgrades back and forth dialogue. Okay, so that's Solaris. The next one's OpenSpark, which is really interesting because now we're talking hardware. Predominantly today, the whole conversation's been about software. So it's the world's first open source microprocessor, and it's governed by the GPL version 2 license. And here it talks about some specifics. If you're a chip guy, that might mean a lot to you. I'm not a chip guy, so it's not as relevant. And then so what this allows you to do is, so here's a layout of a chip, and you can do this. So you can, with the publishing of the code, you can use it as is. You can add and delete cores. So this is, as you see, that is a blow up to 1 of 8 cores. So it's 8 cores on a chip. You can add new instructions, change the floating point unit, all the different ways that you can mess around with this to create your own version and then publish the specs. So here's some of the things that have happened. So there's been ports to FreeBSD and GNU Linux distros. The first was Ubuntu, and then we also had Gentoo, and then Wind River for the embedded market. And as a result of the work here, it's now supported in the Linux kernel 2.6.17. OpenVZ, which is a new Linux visualization package, it's been ported to that. And then a company, Simply Risk, which is a combination of guys working in Italy and the UK, have created a single core design, so from the 8 core, and it's something that they're doing for the embedded market. So what they do is they take the code, write their own version of it, publish it, and then they're hoping that someone will develop it, and their market will then be supporting and servicing the chips that are developed. So obviously with the chip, it's a little more difficult because you actually have to need a foundry to create it. So it's a little bit more labor, resource intense. So, and then here's some of the stats of the OpenSpark. And the last one of the examples is Java itself, which Richard mentioned this morning. Okay, so no longer is Java free to shackle, Java is free. So now it has become a free piece of intellectual property to take and modify. It now lives on the net instead of inside some walls. And Java itself has gone beyond the JCP. JCP is the Java community process, and it's a community of 500 members, corporations, individuals, educational institutes that have worked together to publish specs on Java. And that used to be the community that did it. Now it is bigger than that because it's been liberated. So the license choice on this, there's, let me just also explain for those of you who don't know, there's 3 main types of Java. There's ME, SE, EE. SE is the core. It's also the part that runs on the desktop. ME is a small version and it runs on mobile and embedded devices. And then there's EE. Do I have that here? No, that's on the next one. Sorry, this should be EE down here. EE is the one for the enterprise back on the server. So Java ME is GPL version 2. SE is GPL 2 plus the class path exception. And then EE, which should be down there, has been dual licensed. So it originally was licensed under the CDDL, which is a license that Sun created. It's a version of the Mozilla public license. And we've gone back now and added the GPL to this as well. And one of the main reasons for this is the fact that it can now be used with GNU Linux, and that's very important. As we look to get it out there into as many people's hands as possible, this is one of the reasons. This is one of the ways we want to do it. Okay, so the plan for rolling it out in November, which is about 2 months ago, they liberated the Java compiler, Hotspot VM, and Java help. And on the ME side, the source code, and then Java EE, as I mentioned, they added the GPL version 2. And then in May, which is in time of Java Day, which is a big developer conference for Java, the plan is to release a buildable JDK with the JVMs and the libraries, and then Java ME with the Java device test suite as well. And next, the rest of Sun's software portfolio. So with that, that's the basic formal presentation. Just wanted to run you through that. I'd be very happy to answer any questions that you may have. Yes, sir. You need the...
With the microphone, please, so that
You can hear it later.
on camera.
I like using Acrobat. Is Acrobat, the Acrobat that you buy from Adobe, does that run on OpenSolaris?
That's a good question. I don't know if it has been ported to OpenSolaris or not. Does anybody here know?
It's non-free software, so you shouldn't use it if you value your freedom.
There you go.
Your new partnership with Ubuntu brings up a question to me. One of the things I admire about Ubuntu, and actually more so Debian brew, is just the sheer volume of software and how easy it is to connect to, like a repository of software, and very easy to install. In my playing around with OpenSolaris, I didn't find it quite as easy to manage the packages. Are there any plans moving towards like an internet repository type of system?
Well, that's probably the biggest problems with Solaris today, is the fact that it's just a pain in the butt to maintain. And that's where GNU Linux has it all over Solaris. Solaris kernel is great. The user land, not so hot. Painfully aware of that, and we're looking at different ways that we can remedy it. So, I mean, in the past, it's that sort of attitude that, well, if you can't do it, then you're not mad enough to do it, so don't worry. That doesn't work so well. You're really trying to get a lot of people involved. So, yeah, that's something we're definitely working on. It's a bug. Oh, good question, Steve.
I was curious about your question when you said that some employees were using OpenOffice. What has happened to StarOffice?
So I guess we should, there's a lot of talk about what's going to happen with StarOffice right now. So we're using both. I know, so from home I just downloaded OpenOffice to have it on my machine at home. At work we're using both StarOffice and OpenOffice. I think that's being re-examined. Where does that make sense as a business? Does it make sense to have both? Do we need both? So that's being looked at too. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I have maybe it's kind of a simple-minded question, but I guess you're selling more machines now that the software is much more convenient for users. But I was wondering, there's a lot of software that is already on there, and we used to use one, I think it was called Design Compiler or something like that. It's a logic thing, compiles some stuff. But is there any problem with downward compatibility? Because that would take, you have a freeware version, and then somebody has an older version of it and it doesn't work on it.
Well, I think that
it changes so often. That's what
is it backward compatible or not? And that I don't know. I would think that there is a certain amount of with governance and with the governing body, you hope that doesn't happen. That it's not anarchy, and that you do have a systematic way of including putbacks and changes so that you maintain that backward compatibility. That is a potential issue. So, but you hope to mitigate that as best you can. As I say, different projects have different governance systems, some more democratic than others, some more freeform than others, and you hope to get one that allows it so that there is that you do maintain the backward compatibility.
I'm a government program manager, and I purchased quite a few computers and have purchased many Sun products in the past. About a year and a half to 2 years ago, I've been persuaded to migrate to Intel-based processors. I was told that the V880, V480 line did not run Red Hat Enterprise, and just wondering where is Sun with respect to Red Hat Enterprise today on UltraSpark processors?
It's not with UltraSpark, it is with the x64 or the x86. So one of those guys you saw, the first four founders, Andreas Bechtolsheim, left Sun about 10 years ago, did some gigabit Ethernet went to Cisco, then started his own thing, which was basically doing a really fast x64 AMD Opteron-based line of boxes. And so that's what we're now selling, and that's what Red Hat and SUSE run on, as well as Ubuntu. Ubuntu also has been ported, as I talked about, to UltraSpark, but we haven't gotten Red Hat or the other distros to port to it. So we do have a complete line of systems that does run Red Hat, and we do quite a bit of volume. So that's one of the things that Sun has really done well. Just to back up, I think a little history, as most of you probably know, Sun was doing extremely well as we went into the millennium. And then it just, with everything else that crashed, everything that made the dot-com boom what it was, Sun was perfectly poised to capitalize on that with the boxes that we had. We were then not very well positioned to take advantage of what came next. As you saw, some went for big slide. We're now coming back up and retooling. One of the things was this rehiring of Andreas and bringing on his team, saying that we do need a low-end system line, but we don't want to just be same old V2 boxes like Dell. We want a low-end system line that also has got a little bit of oomph to it, a little bit of secret sauce, and that's where we brought on the systems. Kalia was the name of this company that we bought. So very much now we're doing quite a bit of business in that area, and the majority of those systems do end up running Red Hat. Over here.
One of the things that Sun's been involved in quite a bit over the years is participation in IETF working groups, and they always seem to be serving a very useful counterpoint to Microsoft's participation in some of the same groups. Do you see Sun's focus and resources being applied more in the working groups now that there's this open source, free open source focus for the company?
I'm thinking so. I'm not familiar with that particular group. I think that just with the Microsoft thing, I think we've had as you probably know, an unhealthy fixation against Microsoft. But we've kind of gotten over that now. In fact, we do have a bit of a technology pact with them. So we're looking forward to doing more work in the working groups.
Yes. Could you speak a little bit about the licensing for the basic processors for UltraSparks versus the new Spark T1s?
I don't. So I don't know how. I know how the UltraSpark, the OpenSpark is licensed, right? That's GPL version 2, but I don't know how. I don't know much about chip licensing, so I don't know how it would be licensed before that.
My understanding was that the old Sparks were open architecture, and various other bits that were open, so multiple manufacturers could make them.
Right. So yeah. Okay. So that's right. So
what are the specifics of the differences?
Right. So okay, that's true. So Spark is actually a consortium. It's not owned by Sun. And it can be made, so for example, Fujitsu makes a lot of the Spark chips, and we're doing a lot of work with them on that. So, but it wasn't under so I don't know what license it was, but yes, it was a spec that was actually owned by a consortium, and a bunch of people could make that. How that differs from GPL, I don't know. I'm not sure, but you're right. It wasn't something that was proprietary to Sun. It was open to others as well.
Over here.
Do you know what percentage of Sun's revenue comes from hardware sales versus software? And is Sun's new strategy to diversify and try to have more of the percentage being software? Is that
well, now that everything's going to become free, not really. It's a bit of a shell game, because all that matters is that to stay a going concern is that you're bringing in revenue and you're growing those revenues. Whether that comes from software or hardware or support doesn't matter. So we will be giving away the software. That doesn't mean also sometimes what we'll do, say for example on our application server, the free version of that is Glassfish, and we have our own app server that we sell on top of that. So you can, another way to make money in this model is to offer a different version which you charge money for. But the majority of this is, it's all about the system sale. So whether that's hardware support, it's the whole bundle that you sell. In fact, there's talk about giving the hardware away for free too. So, but what you do is you make it on the support. So whatever, someone's going to have to pay, it'll be the same amount of money, but whether you say this is free, this you pay for, or it's evenly spread across it, you're still getting the same amount, given that they need to buy all of it together. So there's various models that we're looking at. But then just specifically to answer your question, Sun hasn't really broken out software numbers, and they'll be getting smaller, as I said, with what we're doing with free and open source. Yes, sir.
Have you teamed up with any high schools or colleges, maybe in the Bay Area? And have you created any curriculum?
That's a good question. I know that, this is sort of an anecdotal thing, but our ex-CEO and our president, Scott McNeely, he is now working in the Sun Edu, so the education, that's K through 12 and all the way up through universities as well. And one of his big projects is, let's see if I remember the name, Curwiki? So basically it's curriculum plus a wiki put together. And the whole idea is, and I guess he got the idea of working one night with his son on some project that was due the next day. It was really difficult to find good information to help him with a science project. I guess his son was maybe in 4th grade or something. And the whole idea is, can we bring people together? So we're working on that level. I'm sure there are things that we do with high schools. I don't know specifically. I mean, the last one I do remember is NetDay, which, gosh, is about 10 years ago, where we went in and wired all the high schools and schools in the Bay Area. And I'm sure there are things that we're doing, but I specifically don't know about those.
This is a dialogue to continue because Mike Costello is a professor with the Computer Engineering Network and Technology program at Honolulu Community College and works with many of our aspiring young Barton Georges here on the island.
Naively, I might think that if you wanted to liberate all of Sun's software products, it could be like that in one day. Like, okay, here's our website, everything is GPL. It's liberated. Why this? What's the process for this sort of drawn-out process, and how is it going to be handled once it is free and open software? Is there some analog to like the Fedora project that has Red Hat has for its totally community-based distributions?
Right. So a couple different questions in there. First, why can't you flip a switch? And so I'll give an oversimplified answer just because I probably don't know more than that. But the highlight is there's two things. One is encumbrances. So sometimes a lot of your code will have other people's software embedded in it that's proprietary. So whereas you may say, oh yes, mine is free, take it. Other people say, whoa, that's got my stuff in there. You can't give my stuff away. So what you have to do is you have to look for replacements for that, rewrite that. So that's one of the things. Due diligence is to get out all the encumbered code. Make sure you have only unencumbered code in there. The other thing is sometimes your code's a mess. A lot of it, if you're going to turn it over to the community, you don't want to just give them a big pile of junk. You want to go back and you want to clean it up, make it nice, make sure all the documentation is well done. That's another thing that takes time. Yes, sir?
Actually, I disagree.
Okay.
The best shouldn't be the enemy of the good. To rewrite the code to make it perfectly clean and release a wonderful free program obviously is the best thing you could possibly do. But that takes time and money, and it might be better to release the program that's useful in its current form, and then maybe if you've got the time and money to rewrite it later, you can do that. It'll still be possible to do that. But on the other hand, if you don't have the time and money to rewrite that, at least people have got the source code of what they're using.
Right. So you wouldn't want to wait until it's pristine, but you want to be a complete mess. But you're right. If you do have the resources to do it, then that shouldn't necessarily stand in your way. So you still have the encumbrances. The other thing, say in the case of Java, we are moving from one management system, which is Teamware, to another one, which is Mercurial, to better handle the community. And just that transition will take about 6 months, or the infrastructure to support a project like this. So those are some of the things that would stop you from just, as I say, flipping the switch and say it's now free. So what was the other part?
Some analog to the Fedora project, manage what, how will it be managed once it is?
Right, so that was that, remember that chart I showed you of the different types of Solarises? So you could look at OpenSolaris as the corollary roughly to Fedora, which would be the bleeding edge, and then you've got a developer release that would come out very fast cycle that people get their hands on. Lots of corporations don't want something that's constantly spinning and constantly revving. They want you to stop right there so they can work with it and go. So that would be the one, I had 3 down there, it would be the one at the bottom that would be
The OpenSolaris, is that going to be out in the community, or is it going to be Sun employees? Or
oh no, it is out in the community.
Do we even know?
It is out in the community. As I said, those ones that were built, like Linux, Nexenta, those are people who've taken the code and then created their own version of it. So there are people out there, can you find that one? So there are people who are working on it. Then there's different governance models, and that's something I don't know as much about. Probably the one after that, yeah, that one right there. Oh, then actually the one right after that shows some of the, yeah, that one, the innovation happens everywhere. So these are some of the things. We put the code out there. People, I'm sorry, I'm standing in the way. Here's some people who've then taken it and built their own distros of Solaris.
But that's like forking. If I want to make a
Not
change to
necessarily.
Java and have it go back into the real Java, how is that going to be handled? And who's going to vet it to see if I've screwed up the security model?
Right. So that's where the governance model comes in. So you've got people who are on the committee. So for example, for the Linux kernel, it's a very small group. There's different governance models for different places. And for that, Andrew Morton and a couple of the guys basically say, so a lot of people can give you putbacks and can give you patches. They're the ones who say, yes, it comes in, or no, it doesn't. Then there's some places that have much bigger governance bodies where things can come in all over the place. That's not my area of expertise, but there is a whole spectrum. So Sun will have one. What we want to have is the committers, the people who say, yes, this comes in, or no, it doesn't. We want to get it so that there are other people than Sun people there. Right now it is Sun people. That's not the goal over time, is to extend it so that there are people from the community helping you to do that. As I said, they're in the free and open source space, there's people who settled on all different models. One is it's just the inside cadre, people like Sugar, people like JBoss, and there's other ones that are much more inclusive of the community and those people outside the walls of the organization.
Does Sun have a timeline for when they're going to be releasing individual applications, and also are they going to be creating open boards or opening up the election to be on different governing boards for each application? For example, iPlanet, it's an amazing product, but Sun has a lockdown on it, and I'd love to see that become open source so that I can start using it in my company. But there's no saying when it's going to be. I mean, the beginning of iPlanet, the Netscape directory server was supposedly open sourced by Red Hat, but good luck on getting it to run anything but Red Hat.
Right. So the short answer is no. I think it's a process we're going through, and once again, when Jonathan Schwartz said about a year and a half ago that all our software is going to be liberated and it's going to become free and open source software, a lot of engineers freaked out. It's easy to, well, they're thinking easy for you to say, now I have to go and do it. We've taken our biggest 3 blocks of intellectual property, but there's a heck of a lot more. As I said, that's my last slide, and I'll elaborate the rest. But so one of the things is our group internally is working with people to say, this is how you might do it. One of the things we're doing is putting together a playbook. A lot of people don't know how to even start. What are the things I need to be thinking about? What are some of the concerns I have that I should be, red flags I should be looking for? How do I do this? And so that's one of our jobs, is to help the company understand different groups, and there's certain groups who are leading the way and they got it way before other people and they knew how to do it because they've been living that life, and there's other people who haven't lived that at all. So it's a process, and we're going to be working through it. And there isn't a, I don't think we've actually said by the year whatever, or by this month, this year, everything's free, but it's something we're pushing for.
From the community perspective, is there any way that we can help to get certain pieces of software open up faster, or help the process along?
That's a good question. Obviously, once it's open, then it's easy. Then you know how to go in and get involved. Write your congressman. No, I don't know. I think there must be a way. But seriously, I bet if you were to ping Jonathan Schwartz and say, I think XYZ product is really cool, I would love to see it free and open source, he would then send it to my boss, who would then say, to try and make it happen. But I mean, he really reads these things and he does forward them on. That would be one way of doing it. I'm sure there's other ways. I'm not as familiar, but we do listen to folks from the outside. Oh, we're running out of shirts. I think we're going to move on to books next. Or OpenSolaris stickies.
What can you tell me about Genie and its possible integration with operating systems and usefulness, that sort of thing, the future possibilities?
That's a good question. I have not been. Genie has kind of taken it's kind of gone into the shadows. And I remember when it came out, it was a huge deal. Bill Joy was on the cover of Wired with little curly Genie shoes sipping a coffee, I remember, because it was sort of Java, the next Java. And I don't know where we finally ended up taking it. I know that it's now free and open source, but I don't know where it's at. I think have you worked also with Juxta at all? Okay. That's one that another derivative that's actually doing a lot more. I don't know about the Genie project and what's happened to that. I can't remember now.
There are 3 more really good questions in this audience. I'm sure.
Oh, the Punahou guy.
But he's got a t-shirt already. But for his sidekick, or wife, for
future one.
Situation maybe.
The question is, could you talk a little bit about how Sun supports open source projects? Do they contribute code back? Do they provide monetary support or what?
So one of the things, as I said, in the case of GNOME, a lot of code in accessibility that we've given back, internationalization, so things like that. We have people who are on the board. So we have someone who's currently on the board of X.org, and we had their board of directors meeting. We held that at Sun. So that's another thing we do is we, in fact, I just saw, I can't remember which group it was, but there was an email going around saying, hey, we want to use the Sun facility for this community's meeting. Can we do it there? So that's one of the things, making our facilities open, providing code to it. Those are the main things. The other thing we've done too, and which I want to start up again, is a hardware donation program. A lot of the people at Oregon State University, they have a lab there that hosts a lot of the free and open source projects, and we've donated hardware to the companies, and then it actually goes to Oregon State, where they actually run it from. That's another way that we've supported projects, and I'd like to start that again. That kind of went on hiatus. We're getting. Right now it's more onesies, twosies. So there was somebody working on Fedora in Australia who said they wanted an Ultra box, and so we asked somebody in Australia to just see if they could, someone in Sun Australia, to get them one, and we did. So but we'd like to get to a much more formalized process again, so that rather than just sort of onesies, twosies, people saying you have a box we can use, we can say, you know, we've got X number of systems, and this is where we're gonna give them to. So those are some of the ways that we.
That's good, because you see Barton right here. Mike Costell's got a lot of great students who would love to be a part of that program, and Joseph, who certainly likes to help all of our K-12 kids who are ready for that program to start back up, so we can raise the brain trust that Sun needs for continued world domination. I smell, there they are, and I saw the last 2 questions.
Well, I was going to ask if I needed to ask a question to them. I would like to know how easy it is to transfer data, say, from Microsoft Office 2000 to the open source ones.
So going that way is easy. It's what they're working on now is reciprocal. So in other words, if you were to send me a document in PowerPoint or in Excel or in Word, very easy for me to open up an open office. I, in turn, at this point, I can't send you back an open office presentation. You won't be able to open it. And that's what they're working on. So it's unilateral at this point.
It's like a right some sort of plugin extension
I know there's been a lot of talk, but I haven't been, that's not my area.
Yeah, that's all open up.
That's just, that doesn't extend to Word documents and Excel spreadsheets. You can create them and export them from OpenOffice as native Windows.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so I could save it as Excel, blah, blah, or Windows, blah, blah,
Oh, yeah.
and send it back to you. That's right. I try not to send back to people who use Microsystems. Just kidding.
So the question is, now that Sun has started to, or has been selling AMD processors with a 64 line, how does that compare to, say, the Dells and the IBMs and the HPs that are starting to sell it as well? Why would somebody buy the Sun hardware as composed to the other commodity vendors now?
So that, once again, that's not my area of expertise as well, but that is one of the things that we talk about internally, because first of all, we were one of the first people to align ourselves with AMD, so it's pretty easy to say we're the only ones that have it, so we can't compare us. But now that some of the other people are waking up to the fact that AMD has got some pretty good chips, they're doing it as well. There's just various hardware secret sauce kind of stuff that Andy Bechtolsheim and his guys are going to be working on, but I don't know that, and it's not. It obviously becomes a little more difficult at this point, but that's something that we're constantly working on and looking to leapfrog and look for products that are sort of break the mold. So one of the ones we've come out with recently is Thumper. It's the code name, which is just huge. I forget how many bytes of storage that it's got. And it's a server with just tons of storage in it. So something that people really haven't thought of. And so we're looking at ways that we can use, once again, just like some of us thought, take commodity off the shelf products and make something new and make something different from it to stay ahead. Yes, sir.
Maybe just, I was just wondering about, this initiative you have for opening up your software. Oh, okay. The question is, on offshoring. Are you offshoring any of this initiative? I have a lot of stock in Sun, so I'm just wondering if you're doing it the best way possible.
Well, I think that brings up a really good point, because I know what you mean by offshoring, and Sun has done that for some things, and there's also some that have been a big fiasco where we've outsourced things that, this is for internal processes, not for stuff that we pick, but say if I call now, if I have problems with my system, it'll be somebody in Bangalore who will help me. But when you talk about, I think one of the really neat things I love about the free and open source software movement is the fact is that it's completely virtual. And so location is not important. You can work on it if you live in Finland, if you live in Honolulu. I currently live in Santa Clara. We're going to move to Austin, the family, because it's just cheaper living. And I can do my exact same job. The group that I am, my boss is based out of his home outside of London. We've got someone in Sweden, someone in Germany, all over. So the great thing about this community is when you open source or liberate these products, you can get people to contribute from all over the world. It doesn't matter where they are. And so it's different than the concept of offshoring, when you say, okay, I'm taking it to this one physical location. It doesn't matter where they are physically. And that's the really neat thing about it. It's just working with people from time zones all over the place. And actually, before you ask your question, I'm just curious, how many people here collaborate with people around the world? Okay, so I was talking to somebody earlier, I'll get you back in a second, but when I was starting out, I thought I wanted to specialize in international business. And now there really isn't such a thing as international business. Everything we do really is international. And you could be working with somebody, as I say, my buddy in Sweden who's on my group, and we collaborate as if you were in the couple doors down the hall. So that's one of the really neat things about this.
It seems like Sun having hardware and software is in a unique condition to provide a total solution, which would be particularly energy efficient at a time when we're really needing to be that way. Have you explored, what is Sun doing to be sustainable, to move in that direction? For example, VIA in Taiwan has done a lot of fanless, energy efficient processors, and Nortec in Thailand is doing some microclimate junior type things where they have very small, efficient terminals. Do you do anything like that, or what anything like that?
Yeah, so one of the things is that the UltraSpark T1, it's branded Cool Threads. And one of the things is, and I don't know the actual number, but it draws something like 50% less power than similar chips, so you don't have to use the same fans. And that's something that Sun has done quite a bit for. In fact, we have now worked with the state of California to get energy rebates from the state if you buy it. Just like if you buy an energy efficient washing machine, refrigerator, whatever. I don't know if here in Hawaii, but in California, you'll get a rebate from the state because you are conserving energy. So we are now developing systems that are that consume a lot less energy, and as a result, you can get rebates. So that's one of the biggest costs in data centers is electricity for cooling. And so that is actually an area that we're doing a lot of work in, and that's even so down at the individual component level. You're talking more at the system level, but we're also doing it at the individual component when you take the CPU, which is one of the biggest producers of heat in the system. But that is something that we're very much a part of.
Is that for both the AMD line and the Spark line?
The Spark in particular, because that's the one that we actually are designing, and that's the one that's called Cool Threads. AMD, I don't know how much power they draw. I know that we have because we're a big customer there, we have influence into it. But to be honest, I don't know how much energy that draws. But I do know that that's where the system is drawn. I can't remember how it's exactly constructed, but the system itself is done so that it does take less energy. Because that's something we do have control over, the boxes. The Galaxy line is the code name for all those Andy. The Becky boxes is the register to call them, and the Becky Shines boxes.
What I've heard about the opening up of Java is that Sun is sort of opening up the process, and they're going to let other people make their changes and do the versions, but they're still going to have the final say on what's officially correct Java. Is that true? And if so, is the opening up expected to change what types of things get approved and get put in the official version, even though it's still Sun doing it, just that they're opening up and
well, this is that sort of free but shackled. So before we did have the JCP, we still do have the JCP. So even though Sun is the lead person on that, anyone can submit a JSR or something requested. You basically put something forward, and you work on a committee, and you get it to the JCP, and then you get it passed. So it has been a community effort. What we would like to do is get, and I don't know exactly how I did have a governance slide, but I took it out because, as I said, it's not an area I'm familiar with. But we will be looking to get a bigger community and more committers. Just like with all of these things, what it will start out with in the beginning is that some will be the committers, basically the gatekeepers saying whether it's good or not. And then we wanted to grow that and bring more people in. So that will be a direction we'll be moving. But the JCP is not going away, and that is a consortium.
Anybody?
I'm curious, does anybody own stock in Sun? All right. That's right, you already said that. So it'll be very interesting to see. I think I joined in '96, which was right when the internet took off and Sun was perfectly poised and went like a rocket. 2000, and then like rockets, it came back down to Earth, and now we're just about here. So we've had a couple of good quarters, and I think that we're not really ready. There's a lot of hopeful press saying, I think this could be the year of Sun. It's not. This will be the year of Sun. This could be the year of Sun. So, which is much better than Sun is dead, which is what we were hearing for a long time. So it's actually a very exciting time to be there. We're halfway through our fiscal year, so if we make our numbers the next 2 quarters, that will really, which we're on track to do, but reality is that it's going to be the true test. Yeah.
Do you feel that Sun's closed source is attributed to the rocket coming back down to Earth?
No, the main reason that came back down to Earth is that we were perfectly positioned to take advantage of a phenomenon that crashed, right? So it was the phenomenon of the irrational exuberance of the dot-com boom, right? So at that point, money was no object. Everybody wanted the fastest boxes out there. It was all about time to market, get out there quick, quick, quick. VC money was flowing like crazy. Go out there and buy Sun boxes. I don't have time to bring in HP, IBM, and Dell and try and compare. I just want Sun boxes, bring it in, and guys couldn't take orders fast enough. All of a sudden, that whole thing crashed, and people now said, okay, we need to start looking at things. We need to start comparing systems. And Sun had become overpriced. And so that's sort of the retooling that's taken us quite a bit of time to do to reposition ourselves. So that's on the hardware side. And then on the software side, we have seen this phenomenon, which is the free and open source movement, which has come on. And that's something that what we would like to say is that we're getting out in front of it. It's something that we've seen that's really picked up a head of steam, and you've had people like Red Hat who've taken this model and capitalized on it. What we'd like to see is the fact that we figure you can lead, follow, or get out of the way at this point. And we would like to think of ourselves as leading, and you ignore it at your peril. So that's something that we're also betting the company on. As I said, it is our software strategy as opposed to just one of the tacks that we're taking within that.
These have been outstanding questions, even the ones without the free T-shirt. There's clearly a lot of interest in what this company is doing and what they'll continue to do. I, for one, look forward to the sun rising and being brighter than ever this year. It's really easy, the sun, right? Come on.
Oh, journalists love it. They have all sort of sun shines again, the sun is rising, sun down, sun up, blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
Now, before we kind of close out and thank everybody, we've thrown a word around a few times, intellectual property, and our friend Mr. Stallman had a brief few comments he wanted to make about that.
There's a law called copyright, which has to do with using works of authorship. There's a totally different and almost completely unrelated law, which is patent law, which has to do with artificial monopolies on ideas. These two laws have almost nothing in common. There's another law, which is the law of trademarks. Trademarks are symbols that are used basically in advertising so that people can tell what they're buying. Trademark law has nothing in common with copyright law or patent law. But a bunch of lawyers started in the 1960s to confusingly call all of these things intellectual property, which encourages people to completely misunderstand all of them by thinking that they're similar, which they're not. So that term should never be used. People will write about copyright law. Their articles would be completely clear if they said we're talking about copyright law, but they don't. They say the subject is intellectual property. And somebody else writes about patent law, saying something that would be quite clear if you knew he was talking about patent law, but he doesn't say patents, he says intellectual property. And then you read both of those articles and you think they're talking about the same thing, which means you're going to be totally confused. There's only one way to avoid this disastrous confusion, and that is don't lump these laws together. Don't use the term intellectual property, ever. I literally mean that term should never be used because it always spreads confusion. It also contains a bias that you'll see if you look. A bias in terms of how to think about copyright if it's applied to copyright. Or whatever it's applied to, it's a bias, which is take the side of whoever's going to own whatever it is instead of the people restricted by it, which is the opposite of what the U.S. Constitution says about copyrights and patents. They're supposed to exist for the sake of promoting progress. That's all they have in common. They're supposed to promote, their purpose is to promote progress, and they can only last for a limited time. That is the sum total of what copyright law and patent law have in common in the US, because they come out of the same, they're authorized, not required, just authorized by the same article in the Constitution. So, if you think of it as, quote, intellectual property, unquote, you'll probably imagine that it's like physical property, that's some kind of natural right, which is exactly what the Constitution is telling us it isn't. So this is part of the scheme to get people to forget the wise decision taken in the US Constitution. Now, when you stop calling these laws intellectual property and start calling works or ideas or symbols intellectual property, you get even more confused, because works of authorship are one kind of thing and ideas are a totally different kind of thing. If you mix these two up, you're so confused, you'll never understand anything. It's like confusing strings and, confusing floats and pointers. You'll never understand, right? You're lost. We shouldn't start off people by getting them lost. So we should never use that term. In general, if a person uses the term intellectual property, either he's confused or he's trying to confuse you. In this case, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt that you were confused.
IP is only an address. Right?
Yeah, exactly. But in the case of the, quote, World Intellectual Property Organization, unquote, they are trying to confuse you. That organization is malevolent. So I hope this will counteract whatever effect there was from the use of that term. It's very important to distinguish between works like a program or a design or a chip and ideas and symbols that might be trademarks. They're three different kinds of things.
It's nothing that global search would replace on Sun's documentation that Emacs could replace, right?
Well, actually, you want to be more thoughtful than that when you make such a correction. Because you're trying to take, several things have been lumped together, and you want to unlump them, which means a simple search and replace won't do it.
You'd have to have context.
You have to go through with a query replace and change some of them. Sometimes you want to say copyrights. Sometimes you want to say software or works or designs. Sometimes you might want to say ideas. Sometimes you might want to say patents. Sometimes you might want to say trademarks. Sometimes you might want to say logos, right? The logo might be a trademark, but there's to call it a logo is to say what it is, and to call it a trademark is just to emphasize that it's your property, right? So it's better to say what it is, never mind whether somebody's got a monopoly on it. It's still, whether or not that's true, it's still what it is. It's a picture, it's a symbol. So I think we should talk about things as what they are, not in terms of what they mean to one particular party.
And this might be more of a comment than a question, but being here on a university campus, there seems to be an absolute obsession by the faculty with the term intellectual property. How would you recommend, trying to start getting into their minds that this is not the way to think?
Well, I've written a couple of articles about this. Which you can find on GNU.org/philosophy. They might help. But the main thing is just be totally stubborn in refusing to use that term yourself. Refuse to be drawn into any discussion of, quote, intellectual property, quote, because it's not a coherent topic. It's an incoherent overgeneralization of things that are not similar enough to be generalized about. And if you familiarize yourself with differences between copyright law and patent law, and the differences between those and trademark law, which have no similarities, essentially, then you'll be in a position, every time these people overgeneralizations lead people into error systematically. They lead people into supposing these different things are similar, so they make general statements which aren't true. But when you can recognize those, you can point out to people, and you'll be able to do it over and over again in every conversation. You see, you were just led into error by using this misleading term. And you were just led into error, and you were just led into error. Let's talk about copyright. Copyright is a coherent topic. It's one law, although it varies somewhat from country to country, but it's just one law covering one kind of thing, and it makes sense to talk about it. At another time, you could talk about patent law or trademark law or various, there are many others, and they're all different. So that's, I think, the best approach. Show that it's not just biased, it's leading them into factual error.
When it comes to the topic of IP and copyright, I think
one of the most current and confusing topics is the Novell Microsoft deal. Do you have any information on what that really is? Could you explain that at all?
Well, of course, that deal is not, it's a mistake to talk about the subject of IP and copyright. You've already got confused when you say that. Copyright is one thing, patent law is another thing, trademarks are another thing, and then IP is a way of talking about all three of them as if they were one thing, which is nonsense. So, in fact, the deal is complicated and has lots of things in it, and only some of them relate to any of these laws. But the crucial thing in it that makes it so nasty is concerned with patents, not with copyright. What Microsoft did was say that it would give Novell's customers special privilege in regard to Microsoft patents. That it would, in certain cases, Microsoft would promise not to sue them for using free software. Free software covered by the new GPL, in fact. And so this is a threat to the free nature of that software. If people know, well, if you want to be safe, you have to get that software from Novell, then in effect it becomes Novell's proprietary software product. And that's exactly what the GPL is intended not to allow. It's intended not to let anybody turn the free software covered by the GPL into proprietary software. Well, this showed us a new way they can try to do that, so GPL version 3 won't let them.
I'm going to turn the floor back over to Barton George, because inside of this box is something kind of special.
And these boxes as well. So I've got some freebies here to give out. So first of all, we've got a lot of pizza and stuff left over, so starving students, please help yourself. And yeah, we got drinks and all sorts of things. And then also I've got some books. It's called Hello Worlds from Code to Culture, 10-Year History of Java Technology. And I've only got 22, so I think, how many students do we have here? Do we have less than, do we have 22 or less? Yeah, I think we might be able to just give them out to the students. And the interesting thing about this is before Java was liberated, so it's a very important chapter is not written in this book. It took us to the 10th anniversary of Java, which was a year and a half ago. But it still tells you the history. It's a very fascinating history of how something like Java technology came to be out of a mistake. It's kind of an interesting read. It's not an overly intellectual book. It's a coffee table book, nice pictures, big pictures. So you can read it in about a half hour, 45 minutes. So the students want to come down and grab one, help yourself, and then whoever wants to get those.
Down, you're the next contestant.
I do not need any of that pizza, and I'll eat it all because I don't like wasting. So before you go, help us out. So that concludes FOSSCon 2007. The work of free and open source software does not end here. There's ongoing activities all the time. If you don't know about HOSIF, please go to our website. If you don't want to remember the name, please get a card from me. Please come see us on Saturdays in the McKinley Community School for Adults, where we do classes for the homeless in Kaka'ako, where we do classes for senior citizens, where we have open workshops to teach people about e-waste. We do it all free and open source software using repurposed computers. Every third Tuesday of each and every month here on campus, we do similar discussions and lectures. Mike at HCC does good things. Our friends at UH do good things. If you don't know it already, Brigham Young University Hawaii in Laie is probably the most advanced free and open source software campus on the island. It's astonishing. So you're part of something special on this island. We have quite an ecosystem of sharing, collaborating, and making the world better, as is consistent with the values of this culture in which we all live. So go forth today with the inspiration that has been sprung into thy heart, and make this world a better place with free and open source software. Go make some money, go make somebody happy, and go do what you can do. So thanks a lot. On behalf of our friends with HOSIF, Jim Thompson, again, thank you for bringing Richard here. Daniel, thanks for taking care of the audio recording. Julian Yap, thanks for getting the site up, and thanks for doing what you'll be doing next to get the video and audio stream up. Tell your friends about it. They can go to hosif.org and watch all this on that camera or through this recording. And that concludes today's broadcast.
There are more FSF books.
Yes, we've really been.
Thank you. I really appreciate the support.
I mean, we can go, obviously. You all deserve it. 2005. Basically, really is found. Well, I came on the board, actually, I was